Bgmc. The biblical truth lives here.
The ancient Hebrew scriptures foretold of the Anointed One, Yeshua HaMashiach. The Messiah Yeshua came to call the people back to the truth of His word and to follow that righteous path. Yeshua then called Jewish men to be His disciples, and after His death and resurrection, those Jewish men told the world about the Jewish Messiah. Now, after 2,000 years, Beth Goyim Messianic congregation has that same calling of those Jewish men, telling all people, both Jew and Gentile, about the proper ancient path, teaching the Route 66 King's Highway from Genesis through to Revelation, and how you need and can get back to the proper roots of the faith and a closer walk with God. Now, let's hear the message.
Let's go get a blessing. Turn to the book of Ephesians chapter 4.
Vamos a Efesios capítulo 4.
Ephesians chapter 4.
Efesios capítulo 4.
1 second there. Boogers. 1 second.
Un momentito.
Let me just close this and reopen it. All right, we want to make sure that we get our recording straight. All right. There we are. Ephesians chapter 4, Ephesians chapter 4.
Efesios capítulo 4.
Ephesians 4, Ephesians 4.
Efesios capítulo 4.
We're going to get back into the study since we took a break for the holy days and a little extra.
Vamos a regresar en el estudio, con el estudio, como tomamos un reposo durante los días santos y un poquito más.
Make sure you come down here for Bible study. There's good munchies.
Están invitados al estudio bíblico.
All right, let's read Ephesians, the entire chapter of chapter 4.
Vamos a leer el capítulo 4 de Efesios.
Let me turn the volume of this off. Get into a conversation during the pre-Bible study and you forget to do something. All right, let me turn that volume off so we don't get bothered. All right, Ephesians chapter 4. Therefore I, the prisoner united with the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called. Always be humble, gentle, and patient, bearing with one another in love, and making every effort to preserve the unity the Spirit gives through the binding power of Shalom. There is one body and one Spirit, just as when you were called to one hope. And there is one Lord, one trust, one immersion, one God, the Father of all, who rules over all, works through all, and is in all. Each one of us, however, have been given grace to be measured by Messiah's bounty. This is why it says, after he went up into the heights, he led captivity captive and gave gifts to mankind. This phrase, he went up, what can it mean if not he first went down into the lower parts of, that is, the earth? The one who went down is himself the one who also went up far above all of heaven in order to fill all things. Furthermore, he gave some people as emissaries, some as prophets, some as proclaimers of the good news, and some as shepherds and teachers. Their task is to equip God's people for the work of service that builds the body of the Messiah, until we all arrive at the unity implied by trusting and knowing the Son of God at full manhood, and the standard of maturity set by the Messiah's perfection. We will then no longer be infants tossed about by the waves and blown along by every wind of teaching, at the mercy of people clever in devising ways to deceive. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will in every respect grow up into him who is the head, the Messiah. Under his control, the whole body is being fitted and held together by the support of every joint, every part working to fulfill its function. This is how the body grows and builds itself up in love. Therefore, I say this. Indeed, in union with the Lord, I insist on it. Do not live any longer as the pagans live, with their sterile ways of thinking. Their intelligence has been shrouded in darkness. They are estranged from the life of God because of ignorance in them, which in turn comes from resisting God's will. They have lost all feeling, so they have abandoned themselves to sensuality, practicing any kind of impurity, and always greedy for more. But this is not the lesson you learned from Messiah. If you really listen to him and were instructed about him, then you learn that since what is in Yeshua is truth, then so far as the former way of life is concerned, you must strip off your old nature, because your old nature is thoroughly rotted by its deceptive desires. And you must let your spirits and minds keep being renewed. Clothe yourself with a new nature created to be godly, which expresses itself in the righteousness and holiness that flows from the truth. Therefore, stripping off falsehood, let everyone speak truth with his neighbor, because we are intimately related to each other as parts of a body. Be angry, but don't sin. Don't let the sun go down in your anger before you have dealt with the cause of your anger. You leave room for the adversary. A thief must stop stealing. Instead, he should make an honest living by his own efforts. This way, he will be able to share with those in need. Let no harmful language come from your mouth, only good words that are helpful in meeting the needs, words that will benefit those who hear them. Don't cause grief to God's Ruach HaKodesh, for he has stamped you as his property until the day of final redemption. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, violent assertiveness, and slander, along with all spitefulness. Instead, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, and forgive each other, just as in the Messiah has also forgiven you. Amen? So we're going to go back a little bit in our study.
Vamos a regresar un poco en nuestro estudio
To just get back into this really intense Bible study.
para volver en este estudio bíblico que es intenso.
So we're going to just review a little bit tonight for the next 2 hours.
Vamos a repasar un poco esta tarde por la próxima par de horas.
So don't turn it off and say, well, I've already heard all this.
No lo apaguen y digan, ya yo escuché todo esto.
Because a lot of people have heard it
Porque muchos lo han escuchado
and keep living in their old nature.
y siguen viviendo en su vieja naturaleza.
And that's how you have 1,500 denominations of Christianity.
Y así es que tenemos 1500 denominaciones de cristianismo.
And now you even have a bunch of flavors of Messianic Judaism.
Y ahora hay bastantes sabores de el judaísmo mesiánico también.
So let's go back to verse 11 through 13. We're just going to go overview this.
Vamos a regresar a los versículos 11 al 13 para repasar esto.
Verse 11 through 13. We're on slide 230.
Estamos en la diapositiva 230. Vamos a Efesios capítulo 4 versículos 11 al 13.
Ephesians 4, verse 11 through 13 says, furthermore, he gave some people as emissaries, some as prophets, and some as proclaimers of the good news, and some as shepherds and teachers. Their task is to equip God's people for the work of service that builds the body of Messiah, until we all arrive at the unity implied by trusting and knowing the Son of God at full manhood and the standard of maturity set in Messiah's perfection. So let's go on to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Emissaries, prophets, proclaimers of the good news, those are evangelists, shepherds, and teachers and rabbis.
Emisarios, profetas, proclamadores de las buenas nuevas, pastores, maestros y rabinos.
Okay, you can't be an emissary.
No puedes ser un emisario.
You can't be an emissary of Yeshua unless you have been trained in the Torah.
No puedes ser emisario de Yeshua a menos que has sido entrenado en la Torah.
Okay, because you might be teaching people or evangelize. Well, evangelist is different. An emissary is somebody who is sent.
Un emisario es alguien que es enviado.
Okay, somebody who is sent because you're bringing a gift to the world.
Porque estás trayéndole un regalo o un galardón al mundo.
And if you're bringing the wrong gift to the world,
Y si estás trayendo el regalo equivocado al mundo,
then instead of a tool of the Lord, you're a tool of the adversary.
en vez de ser una herramienta para el Señor, eres herramienta para el adversario.
Okay, the next title was prophet.
El próximo título es profeta.
Now remember when Sha'ul was writing this letter to the Ephesians?
Acuérdate que cuando Sha'ul estaba escribiendo esta carta a los Efesios,
Everybody did not have a copy of the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament.
ellos no tenían una copia del Brit Hadashah del Nuevo Testamento.
But what they did have is the Tanakh, the Old Testament.
Pero sí lo que ellos tenían era el Tanakh, el Viejo Testamento.
So prophets need to be trained
So, profetas necesitan ser entrenados
in the Torah.
en la Torah.
And if you go back in our studies of the book of Ephesians and the fivefold
Y
ministry,
si regresas a nuestros estudios de Efesios y el ministerio de
fivefold ministry, the five jobs.
de los 5 títulos o 5 trabajos,
When you come to Deuteronomy 13, Devarim 13,
cuando llegas a Deuteronomio capítulo 13,
the Lord will send somebody that is a fake prophet.
el Señor enviaría a alguien que es falso, un falso profeta.
And he will teach things, and these things will come true that contradict the Torah.
The Lord will send.
The Lord will allow
El Señor permitirá que venga un falso profeta
in Deuteronomy 13
en Deuteronomio 13,
that he'll teach you to go away from the Lord,
que Él te enseñará a alejarte del Señor.
like as most of the churches in their Roman theology,
Como la mayoría de la iglesia está en su teología romana,
like worshiping on the first day of the week, a Roman theology day.
como adorando en el primer día de la semana, una manera de teología romana.
You know, worshiping man-made holy days.
Adorando días santos o días feriados hechos por el hombre.
So a real prophet has to be trained in the Torah.
Un verdadero profeta necesita ser entrenado en la Torah.
Now, everybody can be a proclaimer of the good news.
Ahora todos pueden proclamar las buenas nuevas.
That you believe in Messiah, that Messiah Yeshua has come.
Que crees en Mesías, que el Mesías ha llegado.
But to be an evangelist, one also must be trained.
Pero para ser evangelista también uno necesita ser entrenado.
Because once you go past your testimony
Porque ya cuando uno pasa su testimonio
of what Yeshua has done for you,
de lo que Yeshua ha hecho por ti,
and you get into evangelizing,
y entras al evangelismo,
that's where you need training.
ahí es donde se necesita entrenamiento.
Because you're going to teach people how to follow the Lord.
Porque vas a enseñarle a la gente cómo seguir al Señor.
Okay. Shepherds,
Pastores,
teachers, and rabbis.
pastores, maestros y rabinos.
These people definitively need to be trained in the Torah.
Estos necesitan definitivamente ser entrenados en la Torah.
Now, you have a lot of the church out there, and sadly, a lot of the Messianic body
Tiene muchos de la iglesia y tristemente en el cuerpo mesiánico
that say we're not under the law.
que dicen que no estamos bajo la ley.
Then that means I can steal,
Entonces eso significa que yo puedo robar,
I can covet,
puedo codiciar,
I can lie,
puedo mentir,
I can gamble,
puedo jugar.
You can, just take the top 10 commandments and throw them out the window,
Tomar los 10 mandamientos y echarlo por la ventana,
as most Roman theology type of teachers do.
como la mayoría de teología romana, de los maestros que enseñan teología romana.
Then my question to them is, then why do I got to believe in Messiah?
Entonces mi pregunta para ellos es, entonces, ¿por qué tengo que creer en el Mesías?
Didn't Messiah say, follow me?
¿No dijo el Mesías, sígame?
Would Messiah lie?
¿El Mesías mentiría?
Would Messiah steal?
¿El Mesías tal vez va a robar?
Would Messiah covet?
¿Tal vez el Mesías codiciará?
So here in our review in tonight's lesson
Pues aquí en el repaso de nuestra lección de esta tarde,
of the 5 job titles,
de los 5 títulos de trabajo,
shepherds, if you're going to a congregation
si vas a una congregación
and they're meeting on Sunday,
y están reuniéndose los domingos,
it is better for you not to even go to that church
es mejor que ni vayas a esa iglesia,
because they're just teaching you a demon theology.
porque te están enseñando una teología demoníaca.
Because Yeshua said, I'm the Lord of the Shabbat.
Porque Yeshua dijo, yo soy el Señor del Shabbat.
So it's better not to, go for, the tickly ear people.
Es mejor no ir a aquellos que le cosquillan las orejas,
Okay,
los oídos.
let's go to the next slide and just prove what I said.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva para comprobar lo que yo acabo de decir.
Hold your place in Ephesians 4 and turn to Luke chapter 6, verse 40.
Mantenga su lugar en Efesios capítulo 4 y vamos al Evangelio de Lucas capítulo 6 versículo 40.
Luke chapter 6, verse 40. This is just a review.
Lucas capítulo 6 versículo 40, esto es solo un repaso.
Luke chapter 6, verse 40.
Lucas capítulo 6 versículo 40.
A Talmud is not above his rabbi, but each one, when he is fully trained, will be like his rabbi. So let's pause there.
Vamos a pausar ahí.
Is your life like Yeshua's?
Hazte la pregunta, ¿la vida tuya es como la de Yeshua?
And then when studying the book of Ephesians,
Y en estudiar, mientras estamos estudiando el libro de Efesios,
you must always keep this verse in your mind,
debes siempre mantener este versículo en tu mente.
that you should try to be like Yeshua in every aspect of your life.
Que debes de intentar hacer igual a Yeshua en cada aspecto de tu vida.
So right now, we're getting ready for the next secular holiday called Christ Mass.
Ahora nos estamos preparando para el próximo día secular que se celebra, que es la Navidad.
Do we see that Yeshua ever celebrating his birthday?
Nosotros vemos en la palabra de Dios que Yeshua ha celebrado su cumpleaños.
So if you're supposed to be like him,
So, si debes de ser como él,
and he didn't celebrate his birthday, then you don't either.
él no celebró su cumpleaños ni tú tampoco.
It's that simple.
Es tan simple.
Because Luke chapter 6, verse 40, these are the words of Yeshua.
Porque Lucas capítulo 6 versículo 40, estos son las palabras de Yeshua.
You're supposed to be like the rabbi of rabbis, Yeshua.
Tú debes de ser como el rabino de rabinos, como Yeshua.
So did he ever eat pig?
¿Acaso él ha comido cerdo?
Did he ever celebrate New Year's?
¿Él acaso ha celebrado el nuevo año?
The Roman New Year's?
El nuevo año romano.
No, he didn't.
No.
But he did celebrate Hanukkah
Pero sí celebró Hanukkah.
in John chapter 10, verse 22.
En Juan capítulo 10 versículo 22.
But Hanukkah is not about oil and it's not about presents.
Hanukkah no se trata de aceite ni de regalos.
You want to celebrate presents?
¿Quieres celebrar este regalo?
Then celebrate Purim.
Entonces celebra Purim.
Purim is we give food and presents.
Purim es a donde regalamos comida y regalos.
So read the book of Esther.
So lean el libro de Esther.
Okay, but we're not doing that study tonight.
Pero no estamos haciendo ese estudio esta noche.
So we're looking at becoming like Yeshua. That is needed for the study of Ephesians.
Estamos mirando cómo ser como Yeshua. Eso se necesita para este estudio de Efesios.
Okay, we're going to go past a bunch of slides.
Vamos a pasar muchas diapositivas.
Okay, I'm going to go past all those slides in the tech department. I'll tell you what slide we're going to in a moment. Because we've already done this. We'd spent 2 or 3 weeks on the fivefold ministry.
Sí, nosotros ya repasamos el ministerio de cinco títulos.
We're now on slide number 254 for the tech department, and if you're following the slides, slide 254.
Estamos en la diapositiva 254.
We're looking at section number 6, section 6, verse 15 and 16.
Estamos viendo sección 6, versículos 15 y 16.
Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will in every respect grow up into him who is the head, the Messiah. Under his control, the whole body is being fitted and held together by the support of every joint, with each part working to fulfill its function. This is how the body grows and builds itself up in love. Okay, so let's review this a little.
Vamos a repasar esto un poco.
Okay, so we're supposed to be one body.
Debemos de ser un cuerpo.
So that means we follow the Father, what he said from the mountain.
Eso quiere decir que nosotros seguimos al Padre de lo que Él dijo en la montaña.
And on the mountain he said, keep the Shabbat holy.
Y en la montaña Él dijo que mantengan el Shabbat santo.
So one body is supposed to worship together on the same days.
So un cuerpo tiene que celebrar juntos en el mismo día.
Okay.
O los mismos días.
And we're supposed to, in verse 16,
En versículos 16,
it says, under his control, the whole body is being fitted and held together by the support of every joint, and each part working to fulfill its function. This is how the body grows and builds itself up in love. Okay, so we're supposed to be under the control of Messiah.
debemos de estar bajo el control de Mesías.
Okay, so if Yeshua never broke the commandments,
So, si Yeshua nunca quebrantó los mandamientos,
anybody who says we're no longer under the commandments
el que diga que ya no estamos bajo los mandamientos,
is not under the control of Messiah,
no están bajo el control del Mesías,
but control of demons.
pero el control de los demonios.
And Sha'ul, when he says, and this was very clear in the Galatians study and the Ephesians study,
Y esto está bien claro de lo que dijo Pablo en el estudio de Gálatas y
and Ephesians,
Efesios.
okay, that he's not saying we're not under the law anymore.
Él no está diciendo que no estamos bajo la ley ya.
Because here he's writing,
Porque aquí él está escribiendo
we're supposed to be under the control of the Messiah.
que debemos de estar bajo el control del Mesías.
And Messiah Yeshua said, he and the Father are one.
Y Yeshua el Mesías dijo claramente que él y el Padre son uno.
Now in verse 16 again,
En el versículo 16 nuevamente.
under his control, the whole body is being fitted and held together by the support of every joint, with each part working to fulfill its function. This is how the body grows and builds itself up in love. Okay, working to fulfill your function.
Trabajando para cumplir tu función.
This is why our studies at Beth Goyim are so long.
Por eso que los estudios aquí en Beth Goyim son tan largos.
Because if you're to fulfill your function,
Para cumplir tu función,
that means you must be educated
eso significa que debes de ser educado
in the Word of God from a Torah-observant, Messianic perspective.
en la palabra de observando la Torá de un perspectivo mesiánico.
Like you got to be trained how to be a man.
Como tienes que ser entrenado, cómo ser un hombre.
I know the world says it's toxic masculinity.
Yo sé que el mundo dice que es masculinidad tóxica.
Okay? But God says this is how I want men to act.
Pero Dios dice que esto es como yo quiero que el hombre actúe.
And he goes through in Torah what a man is supposed to be.
Y él describe en la Torá lo que un hombre debe de ser.
The man is supposed to take care of his home.
El hombre tiene que cuidar de su hogar.
He's not to be taken care of.
Él no está para que lo cuiden.
He is supposed to be the protector
Él está supuesto ser el protector.
in spirit and in the physical.
En espíritu y en lo físico.
Most of all, in the spirit.
Más en el espíritu.
Okay? The woman is supposed to be a godly woman,
La mujer tiene que ser una mujer piadosa,
providing all the needs for her husband,
proveyendo todas las necesidades para su esposo,
keeping a good house,
manteniendo un buen hogar,
In Proverbs 31, it goes through a whole list what the ladies have to do.
En Proverbios capítulo 31 nos dice una lista entera de lo que una
And if she
mujer
doesn't
debe
know,
hacer.
and if she doesn't know how to cook, she better learn.
Y si no sabe cocinar, debe de aprender.
How does a Jewish woman make dinner?
She calls out.
She calls for reservations. We got reservations at 8. I just did my nails. Okay? So she's got to learn how to keep house.
Ella tiene que aprender cómo atender la casa.
In Proverbs 31, she can be a business owner.
En Proverbios 31, ella puede ser dueña de una empresa.
Okay? So each part of the body
So, cada parte del cuerpo
needs to know what they're supposed to do.
necesita saber su función.
The man is supposed to wear the talit.
El hombre tiene que usar el talí.
It's the uniform of the biblical army of Israel.
Es el uniforme del ejército bíblico de Israel.
Women are not allowed in the biblical army of Israel.
Las mujeres no son permitidas en el ejército bíblico de Israel.
So what do, here in verse 16 again,
So, aquí en el versículo 16 nuevamente,
what does a young boy have to do?
¿qué tiene que hacer un joven?
Well, the Torah goes over different levels of responsibility.
La Torá nos explica los diferentes niveles de la responsabilidad.
And Yeshua didn't say to break those things.
Y Yeshua no nos dijo que quebrantemos esas cosas.
Okay. Verse 16 again.
Versículo 16 nuevamente.
Under his control, the whole body is being fitted and held together by the support of every joint, each part working to fulfill its function. This is how the body grows and builds itself up in love. Okay? So you can't have clean and unclean parts working together.
No puede tener partes limpias ni partes inicuas trabajando juntos.
This is very difficult to understand.
Esto es muy difícil para entender.
Well, can we work together with somebody who's getting ready for Christmas?
¿Podemos trabajar con alguien que se está preparando para la Navidad?
No, that's unclean.
No, eso es impuro.
It's Roman.
Es romano.
So we're not one body.
No somos un cuerpo.
My Messiah is a Hebrew, he's a Jew.
Mi Mesías es un hebreo, él es judío.
And he followed his father's commandments.
Y él siguió los mandamientos de su padre.
Okay? So if each part is working to fulfill its function,
Si cada parte está trabajando para cumplir su función,
that means we all have to be working in unison.
eso significa que todos tenemos que estar trabajando unidos.
Okay? So
Unísono.
if one person doesn't want to follow the laws,
Si una persona no quiere seguir las leyes,
now there's one thing to say if they don't know them yet.
es algo diferente si ellos dicen que no lo conocen todavía.
That's a different understanding.
Eso es un entendimiento diferente.
They're not saying they don't want to do them. They said, I don't know them.
No están diciendo que no quieren cumplirlo, sino que están diciendo que no lo conocen, no lo saben.
But if somebody has a Bible
Pero si alguien tiene una Biblia
and they refuse to follow the biblical holy
y
days,
ellos se rehúsan a seguir los días santos bíblicos,
then we're not fitted together.
entonces no estamos en conjunto.
Now, how did this work in Ephesus?
¿Cómo esto funcionó en Éfeso?
Now, remember,
Efesios.
it was a major city.
Acuérdense que era una gran ciudad,
Over 28 weeks ago,
como 28 semanas atrás,
when we started this study,
cuando comenzamos este estudio,
we went over the city and what the city was like.
nosotros explicamos cómo era la ciudad.
We know from the book of Acts
Sabemos del libro de los Hechos
that in Ephesus was Artemis of the Ephesians, a fake god.
que en
Ephesus.
Efesios existía Artemisa, un dios falso.
Okay? And we know that they had one of the largest pagan churches in the world.
Y sabemos que ellos tenían uno de las iglesias paganas más grandes del mundo en ese tiempo.
So Sha'ul is writing this letter
So Sha'ul está escribiendo esta carta
to new baby believers,
a creyentes recién nacidos,
Jews and Gentiles, primarily Gentiles,
judíos y gentiles, primariamente gentiles,
who had left being pagans.
que han salido de ser paganos.
And now we're working together to fulfill our function.
Y ahora estamos trabajando juntos para cumplir nuestra función.
And that's what the body of Messiah is not doing today.
Y eso es lo que el cuerpo del Mesías no está haciendo hoy.
Because they don't know what their function is.
Porque ellos no saben lo que es su función.
That's the biggest problem.
Ese es el problema más grande.
Because they've been sold a lie from Satan.
Porque le han vendido una mentira del diablo.
Okay? So let's move on from this part here.
Vamos a seguir en adelante.
I'm going to skip a bunch of slides for the tech department. We're going to go to section number 7.
Vamos a la sección número 7.
We're on slide number 260.
Estamos en la diapositiva 260.
260.
260.
We are in verse 17 to 20.
Estamos mirando los versículos 17
And then-
al 20.
Now we're going to slow down.
Ahora vamos a ir un poco más despacio,
Because this is where we ended a bunch of weeks ago before the holy days.
porque esto es a donde nosotros pausamos antes de los días santos.
And I believe this is the heart of the entire book of Ephesians.
Y yo creo que este es el corazón del el libro de Efesios.
If you're ever arguing with a Christian
Si estás discutiendo con un cristiano
or a Messianic
o un mesiánico
or a secular pagan,
o un pagano secular,
understand verse 17 through 20.
entiendan los versículos 17 al 20.
This is the key to the entire book of Ephesians, Colossians, Galatians.
Este es la clave para el libro de Efesios, Colosenses y Gálatas.
Okay, therefore I say this, indeed, in union with the Lord, I insist on it. Do not live any longer as the pagans live, with their sterile ways of thinking. Their intelligence has been shrouded in darkness, and they are estranged from the life of God because of the ignorance in them, in which in turn comes from resisting God's will. They have lost all feeling. They have abandoned themselves to sensuality, practicing any kind of impurity, always greedy for more, but this is not the lesson you learn from the Messiah. Okay? So here, verse 18 is the biggest key verse. No, 18.
Versículo 18 es el versículo clave.
Let's go to verse 18.
Vamos al versículo 18.
Their intelligence has been shrouded in darkness. They are estranged from the life of God because of the ignorance in them, which in turn comes from resisting God's will. Okay, that is the major point of the entire study that we're doing.
Esto es el punto mayor de todo el estudio que estamos haciendo.
When you are, how do you know what God's will is? How do you know what the Father's will is?
¿Cómo es que sabrás cuál es la voluntad del Padre?
And remember, he's talking about the Father,
Acuérdate que él está hablando del Padre,
because in chapter 3 he said he was praying to the Father for them.
porque en capítulo 3 él dijo que él estaba orando al Padre por ellos,
Okay, so resisting God's will.
resistiendo la voluntad de Dios.
This is when you don't follow the laws of God,
Esto es cuando no sigues las leyes de Dios,
then you are resisting God's will.
entonces estás resistiendo la voluntad de Dios,
Okay, like the kosher laws.
como las leyes kosher.
Well, the Christian will say, you know, if they've actually read the Gospels, which most haven't,
Si los cristianos dirían si en verdad ellos han leído los evangelios, que la mayoría no lo han hecho,
because they have the Roman theology,
porque tiene su teología romana.
it said Yeshua made all foods clean.
Dicen que Yeshua ha hecho todas las comidas limpias o puras.
In the Torah,
En la Torah,
in Leviticus, Vayikra, chapter 11,
en Levítico capítulo 11,
yes. He does not make Noches de Colombia kosher.
Eso no hace de la comida de noches de Colombia kosher.
All right. In Vayikra Leviticus chapter 11,
En Levíticos capítulo 11,
he tells you what is food and what is not food.
él explica lo que es comida y lo que no es comida.
Just like if I followed a Doberman Pinscher dog around, like
Como
a
si-
poodle. You'll know what a poodle is.
Como si sigo un poodle.
I
perrito.
follow a big dog around for a week,
Que si sigo un perro grande por una semana
and I capture what comes out of his butt for a week.
y capturo lo que sale, el excremento que sale del perro por una semana.
And I put it on a plate. I get a plate,
Consigo un plato,
and I get a beautiful china plate.
saco un plato chino,
Okay, and I put some beautiful lettuce down.
lo adorno con lechuga,
I cut some onion.
corto un poco de cebolla,
I put some tomato down.
lo adorno con tomate
And in the middle of the plate,
y en el centro del plato
I put 2 scoops of Doberman Pinscher poop on there.
pongo 2 cucharadas de excremento de perro.
Are you going to eat it?
¿Te lo vas a comer?
Even Martin might. The Salsa Verde show might eat it.
Anything with hot sauce is good.
And Martin is taking a big bite of something. All right. So that's not food, right?
Eso no es comida, ¿verdad?
The dog poop is not food.
El excremento de perro no es comida.
So if you are eating pork
So, si estás comiendo cerdo
or shellfish,
o mariscos,
lobster,
langosta,
calamari,
calamare.
okay, you are resisting. You got to change it?
Yeah, I gotta change.
Hold on a second. We got to change the translators. Batteries. Shalom. There's lots of good goodies on the table. Okay. So if you are eating calamari or lobster
So, si estás comiendo calamare o langosta
or pork,
o cerdo,
that is not food to God.
eso no es comida para Dios.
So if you are doing this, then you are resisting God's will.
Si estás haciendo esto, entonces estás resistiendo la voluntad de Dios.
All right, let's go on to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Verse 17.
Versículo 17.
Therefore I say this indeed in union with the Lord, I insist on it. Do not live any longer as the pagans live, with their sterile way of thinking. Amen?
Amén.
Okay, so this is a big verse.
Este es un versículo mayor.
Because this verse 17 proves
Este versículo 17 comprueba
that Yeshua did not do away with the law on the cross.
que Yeshua no aboló la ley en la cruz.
Because he's talking about living as the pagans live.
Porque él está hablando aquí de que no vivan como los paganos vivan.
How would I know what a pagan lifestyle is?
¿Cómo sabré lo que es un estilo de vida pagano?
Okay? How would I know what a holy lifestyle is?
¿Cómo sabré lo que es una vida santa?
So this proves that in verse 17
En versículo 17 comprueba
that he's telling the Gentiles to leave their pagan lives
que él está diciéndole a los gentiles que dejen sus vidas paganas
and to start following the Torah.
y que comienzan a seguir la Torah.
Somebody help Paula with that. That thing could go up in the space shuttle. Try and open that container. I was like, I did the same thing. Okay? So how do I know what a pagan lifestyle is?
¿Cómo voy a saber lo que es un estilo de vida pagano?
How do I know what a holy lifestyle is?
¿Cómo voy a saber lo que es una vida santa?
Now remember, he's writing this to the Ephesians,
Acuérdate que él está escribiéndole esto a los Efesios.
these Gentiles who have left worshiping Artemis or their other gods,
Estos gentiles se han apartado de adorar a Artemisa o a sus otros dioses
to follow the Torah,
para seguir la Torah,
to leave Romanized theology
para dejar la teología romanizada
or pagan theology.
o teología pagana.
And this verse still works for us today.
Y este versículo todavía está en efecto para nosotros.
You
hoy.
can't just say, I believe in Messiah.
No simplemente puedes decir que creo en Mesías.
You have to not live like a pagan any longer.
Ya no puedes vivir como un pagano más.
Okay? So verse 17,
Versículo 17.
therefore I say this, indeed, in union with the Lord, I insist on it. Do not live any longer as the pagans live with their sterile way of thinking. Amen?
Amén.
So there was a difference in way the Torah observant Jews were living their lives.
Había una diferencia de cómo los judíos que observaban la Torá estaban viviendo sus vidas.
So this is why if you're at a congregation that worships on Sunday,
Por eso que si estás en una congregación que adora los domingos,
that means you're still living like a pagan.
eso significa que todavía estás viviendo como un pagano.
Because does the Father change?
Porque ¿acaso cambia el Padre?
Malachi 3:6 says it does. The Father doesn't change.
Malaquías capítulo 3 versículo 6 dice que él no cambia.
Did the Father speak the Sabbath from Har Sinai, the mountain?
¿Será que acaso el Padre habló del Shabbat en el monte Sinaí?
No, he said keep the Shabbat holy.
Él dijo guarda el Shabbat santo.
So if you're worshiping on a Sunday, then you're living like a pagan Roman.
Si estás adorando domingo, entonces estás viviendo como un romano pagano.
And, you can't just choose a day that you want to worship.
No simplemente puedes escoger un día que quieres adorar.
So then the next thing is the Christian will say, I worship every day.
Entonces el cristiano diría que yo adoro todos los días.
Well, that's true. We worship God every day.
Eso es verdad, nosotros adoramos a Dios todos
But
los
the
días.
Shabbat is a day that we don't work,
Pero el Shabbat es un día que es apartado, que no trabajamos
that we don't cook,
y no cocinamos.
that we're supposed to be in a holy gathering.
Y estamos supuestos estar en una convocación santa.
So that doesn't mean you do your 2 hours at your church
Eso no significa que simplemente haces 2 horas en tu iglesia
and then go to the diner for lunch.
y después sales a comer.
Well, I'm not working.
Pero, dirían, yo no estoy trabajando.
Well, you're acting like a pagan by making somebody else work.
Pero estás actuando como un pagano en hacer que otro trabaje.
Let's go to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Okay. Verse 17 again. I'm moving quickly because we've done this before. It's a review.
Estoy moviéndome un poco ligero porque esto es simplemente un repaso. Nosotros ya estudiamos esto.
Therefore I say this, indeed, in union with the Lord, I insist on it. Do not live any longer as pagans live with their sterile way of thinking. Amen?
Amén.
The word in union,
La
or
palabra
the word pagan, pagan,
La palabra pagano
is sometimes in other translations Gentile,
en algunas otras traducciones es gentil,
which is G1484.
que es G1484.
Okay. Definition number 1.
Significado número 1.
A multitude of individuals the same nature or the same nature.
Es una multitud de individuos de la misma naturaleza.
Let's go to definition number 3.
Vamos al significado número 3.
A foreign nations not worshiping the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Naciones extranjeras no adorando al verdadero Dios de Abraham, Isaac y Jacob.
Okay, so here in verse 17,
Aquí en el versículo 17,
I think actually it's a pretty profound word
aquí yo pienso que es una palabra bien profundo,
where Sha'ul says, do not live like the Gentiles live.
a donde dijo Sha'ul que no viva como los gentiles viven.
That should shut the case right there.
Eso debe de cerrar el caso ahí.
That means he wants them to start living like Hebrews.
Eso quiere decir que Él quiere que comiencen a vivir como hebreos.
So a Torah observant Hebrew
Un observante de la Torah hebreo.
does not worship trees,
No adora árboles,
does not worship on a Sunday.
no adora el domingo.
Well, I don't worship trees.
Pero yo no adoro árboles.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Deja hacerte una pregunta.
Christmas.
Navidad.
Most Americans bring a tree into their house.
La mayoría de americanos traen un árbol en su casa.
And they decorate it with all sorts of things in silver and gold.
Lo decoran con varias cosas con oro y plata.
And then they put presents under the tree.
Y después ponen regalos debajo del árbol.
How did those presents get there?
¿Cómo es que esos árboles, los regalos llegaron ahí?
Did you throw them from across the room?
¿Lo tiraste desde el otro lado del cuarto?
No, you bowed before the tree to put the present under the
Te
tree.
postraste antes del árbol para poner los regalos ahí.
So the tree is now an idol.
So, el árbol es un ídolo.
And you were bowing to the idol God that
Y
the
te
Gentiles made.
Y te estás postrando a un ídolo que los gentiles han hecho.
Okay, so in verse 17,
El versículo 17,
he's saying, don't live like the Gentiles live.
él está diciendo que no viva como viven los gentiles.
Let's go on to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima página.
Verse 17 again.
Diapositiva. Versículo 17.
I say this, indeed, in union with the Lord, and I insist on it, do not live any longer as the pagans live, with this sterile way of thinking. Okay, so what's a sterile way of thinking?
So, ¿qué es una manera de pensar estéril?
Okay, that is G3153.
Eso es G3153.
That means devoid of truth,
Eso es
absent of truth.
el falta de verdad, ¿no? Ausencia de verdad. La
Well-
ausencia de verdad.
What would be truth?
¿Qué sería la verdad?
Don't eat the pig.
No comas el cerdo.
Keep the 7 biblical holy days.
Guarde los 7 días santos.
What would be truth?
¿Qué sería verdad?
To wear seats, men to wear seat. What would be truth?
¿Qué sería verdad?
Men to wear seats so that they can be seen.
Los hombres usar los tzitzit para que se vean.
Putting them in your pants would not be truth.
Guardándolo en tus pantalones no sería verdad.
Because Jehovah said you're to see them.
Jehová dice que es para verlo, para uno mirarlo.
So what would be truth?
¿Qué será la verdad?
That all men that follow Yeshua have to be
Que
circumcised.
todos los hombres que siguen a Yeshua tienen que ser circuncidados.
Okay. Well, I'm circumcised of heart.
Yo estoy circuncidado en el corazón.
No, that doesn't help.
Eso no ayuda.
Well, it does, because then if you have circumcision of heart, you would want to follow the laws.
Bueno, sí ayudaría porque si estás circuncidado en el corazón, entonces vas a querer seguir las leyes.
But if you refuse to get circumcised,
Pero si te rehusas en ser circuncidado,
then you're devoid.
yeah.
2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I say each Bible study to it. Okay, so if you don't want to get circumcised in the flesh, men,
So, si no quieres ser circuncidado en la carne,
or you want the women to take care of you,
o tú quieres que las mujeres te cuiden
and you don't want to protect your home,
y no quieres proteger tu hogar,
then you're devoid of truth.
entonces la verdad no está en ti.
Definition number 2.
No tienes la verdad.
Definition 2.
El segundo significado.
Perverseness and depravity.
Depravidad y perversidad.
I mean, this is an amazing couple of verses.
Estos par de versículos son bien asombrantes.
Okay, so Sha'ul is saying that if you don't want to follow Torah,
Sha'ul está diciendo que si no quieres seguir la Torah,
you're a depraved person.
eres una persona depravada.
Okay? And a depraved person doesn't believe in God,
Y una persona depravada no cree en Dios,
doesn't follow the laws of God.
no sigue las leyes de Dios.
A depraved person speaks against their congregation.
Una persona depravada habla en contra de su congregación.
A depraved person speaks against the leadership of the congregation.
Una persona depravada habla en contra del liderazgo de la congregación.
And they're demonically possessed.
Y son poseídos satánicos.
And how can you prove that one?
¿Y cómo puedes comprobar eso?
Oh, you just have to read about Korach.
Simplemente tienes que leer sobre Corán.
And, it's real simple.
Es bien simple.
Okay? So let's go on to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Verse 18.
Versículo 18.
Their intelligence has been shrouded in darkness, and they are estranged from the life of God because they're ignorant, because of the ignorance in them, which in turn comes from resisting God's will. As we went over,
Como repasamos,
we already started with this verse.
ya comenzamos con este versículo.
This verse proves that he's teaching Torah
Este versículo comprueba que él está enseñando Torah.
because you're estranged from a life of God.
Porque estás alejado de una vida con Dios.
Okay? So, if you're not doing what Messiah did, if you're not like the rabbi,
So, si no estás haciendo como el Mesías hizo, si no eres como el rabino.
that's why we started in Luke 6, verse 40,
Por eso que comenzamos en Lucas 6, versículo 40,
where Yeshua said you to be like him.
que a donde Yeshua dice que debes de ser como él.
And you can never go wrong with that.
Y nunca puedes equivocarte con eso.
And he's never going to get angry with you for doing that.
Y nunca se va a enojar contigo por hacer eso.
All right, let's go on to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Okay. Verse 18 again.
Versículo 18 nuevamente.
Their intelligence has been shrouded in darkness, and they're estranged from the life of God because of the ignorance in them, which in turn comes from resisting God's will. What's the word darkness?
¿Cuál es la palabra tinieblas o oscuridad?
Okay, this G04-06
Es G4656.
Definition number 2, metaphorically, to be darkened, blind the mind.
Significado número 2. Metafóricamente, ser entenebrecido o ciego en la mente.
Who would want to blind you from the life with God?
¿Quién te quiera cegar de una vida con Dios?
The demons
Los demonios
and Hasatan himself.
y Hasatán mismo.
How do you have a life with God?
¿Cómo es que tienes una vida con Dios?
See, Yeshua said, follow him.
Yeshua dijo, sígame.
He's not going to follow you.
Él no te va a seguir a ti.
That's a big key, everybody.
Esa es una clave grande.
This is what Sha'ul is writing in Ephesians 4.
¿De acuerdo?
This is what Sha'ul is writing in Ephesians 4:18.
Esto es lo que Sha'ul está escribiendo en Efesios capítulo 4, versículo 18.
Yeshua the Messiah said, sígame, follow him.
Yeshua, el Mesías dijo, follow me, sígueme.
So, if you're blind to that narrow path,
Si eres ciego a ese camino estrecho,
okay, then you're going to get lost
entonces te vas a perder
and you're going to crash your car.
y vas a chocar tu vehículo.
Let's go on to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Now, verse 18 has a very powerful word.
El versículo 18 tiene una palabra bien poderosa.
Let me read verse 18 again.
Deja leer el versículo 18 nuevamente.
Therefore, intelligence has been shrouded in darkness, and they are estranged from the life of God because of ignorance in them, which comes from, in turn, comes from resisting God's will. Okay, here in verse estranged.
Excluido.
It's G526.
Es G526.
Definition number 2.
Significado número 2.
to be shut out from one's fellowship intimacy.
Ser excluido de compañerismo, con amistad o compañerismo y intimidad.
So we're supposed to be intimate with God.
Debemos de ser íntimos con Dios.
As a husband and wife are intimate.
Como un esposo y esposa son íntimos.
And in Genesis chapter 2 it says, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh.
Y en Génesis capítulo 2 dice, el hombre dejará a su madre y su padre y se unirá con su esposa.
And then they're going to get children, but you have to be intimate.
Y van a tener hijos, pero tienen que ser íntimos.
So here, if you're not leaving a Gentile lifestyle,
Aquí, si no estás viviendo un estilo de vida gentil,
you don't want to leave that Roman theology,
no quieres dejar esa teología romana,
then you're not getting into heaven
entonces no vas a entrar al cielo,
because you're estranged from God.
porque eres excluido de Dios.
You're estranged from the intimacy with God.
Estás excluido de la intimidad con Dios.
Okay? This is very powerful verse that he's writing here.
Este versículo es bien poderoso que le está escribiendo aquí.
Now let's go on to the next slide.
Ahora vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
How does one become estranged from God?
¿Cómo es que uno viene a ser excluido de Dios?
Well, in Matthew 7, Yeshua said,
En Mateo 7, Yeshua dijo,
to those that were believers in him,
a aquellos que eran creyentes en él,
but we preached in your name.
pero predicamos en tu nombre,
We healed in your name.
sanamos en tu nombre.
And what does Yeshua say to them?
¿Y cómo es que Yeshua le responde?
I don't know you,
No los conozco.
you worker of lawlessness.
Trabajadores de iniquidad, hacedores de iniquidad.
So they were evangelizing,
Estaban evangelizando,
but they were not evangelizing with the truth.
pero no estaban evangelizando con la verdad.
Let's go on to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Any questions so far?
¿Hay preguntas hasta ahora?
Any comments or anything?
¿Comentarios?
Let's go to verse 18.
Vamos al versículo 18.
We're now looking at resisting God's will.
Ahora estamos mirando el resistir la voluntad de Dios.
Okay? Resisting is the word ignorance
Resistir es la palabra ignorancia.
in some translations. In some translations.
En algunas traducciones.
It is G52.
Es G52.
Okay? Resisting God's will means definition number 2,
Resistiendo la voluntad de Dios, que es el segundo significado,
especially of divine things.
especialmente de cosas divinas.
What are the divine things?
¿Qué son las cosas divinas?
Shabbat.
Shabbat.
Washing your hands and feet before entering into Shabbat.
Lavando tus manos y pies antes de entrar a Shabbat.
What do we do every Shabbat?
¿Qué hacemos cada Shabbat?
We sound the shofar.
Sonamos el shofar.
We wash our hands and feet.
Lavamos nuestras manos y pies.
Why do you wash your hands and feet? There's a study on the website.
¿Por qué te lavas las manos y los pies? Hay un estudio en el sitio web.
You're becoming a priesthood.
Está entrando al sacerdocio.
And before ministering to the Lord,
Y antes de administrarle al Señor,
Aaron and his sons
Aarón y
washed
sus
their
hijos
hands and feet.
se lavaban las manos y los pies.
And then what do? We have a bread offering.
¿Qué hacemos? ¿Tenemos una ofrenda de pan?
Well, we don't have to do bread offerings anymore.
¿No tenemos que hacer ofrendas más?
You're resisting God's will.
Estás resistiendo la voluntad de Dios.
You like your Roman gods, don't you?
Te complacen tus dioses romanos.
You're supposed to have a grain offering for Shabbat.
Tienes que tener una ofrenda de granos para Shabbat.
You're supposed to have a wine offering for Shabbat.
Debes de tener una ofrenda de vino para Shabbat.
But you're resisting God's will
Pero estás resistiendo la voluntad de Dios.
because you're not even entering into Shabbat.
Porque no estás entrando aún en Shabbat.
Definition number 3,
Significado número 3.
moral blindness.
ceguera moral.
This is when you refuse to change.
Esto es cuando te rehusas a cambiar.
There's one thing about not knowing,
Es una cosa el no saber.
and this is what he's writing about in Ephesians 4.
Y de eso es lo que él está hablando en Efesios capítulo 4.
Remember, these people are babies.
Acuérdate que esta congregación son bebés.
And this is what we always teach here.
Y esto es lo que siempre enseñamos aquí.
Do you have to do all the law? Yes.
¿Tienes que cumplir con toda la ley? Sí.
But you don't put the roof on the house first before building a foundation.
Pero no pones la azotea en la casa antes de poner el cimiento.
So, what's the cornerstone
¿Cuál es la piedra angular
that you got to do your first year?
que tienes que hacer en tu primer año?
Is Shabbat and the 7 holy days.
Es Shabbat y los 7 días santos.
Okay. Do you got to do the other things that you can do? You should do.
Las otras cosas que puedes hacer, debes de hacerlo.
But you got to build the house.
Pero tienes que edificar la casa.
Well, I can't give up my pork.
Pero no puedo dejar de comer cerdo.
All right. Well, let's work on the Shabbat and the 7 holy days.
Okay, vamos a trabajar con el Shabbat y los 7 días santos.
And the Lord will know your heart if you just don't want to do it.
Y el Señor conoce tu corazón si en verdad no lo quieres hacer.
And He hears your thoughts,
Y él escucha tus pensamientos
even when you're dreaming.
hasta cuando sueñas.
Think of that one.
Piensa sobre eso.
Let's meditate on that for a moment.
Vamos a meditar en eso un momentito.
The Lord is the one who gives the dreams,
El Señor es el que da los sueños,
but you're the one who acts in the dreams.
pero tú eres el que actúa en los sueños.
And He's recording this.
Y Él está grabando esto.
Whoo.
Ufa. Oh boy. How many of us have got to teshuva now, right?
All right, next slide.
La próxima diapositiva.
Okay. Resisting God's will.
Resistiendo la voluntad de Dios.
Okay. That is G4457.
Es G4457.
Yes. Resisting God's will is mental discernment.
Es discernimiento.
Obtrusiveness of mental discernment.
What?
Number 2.
Número 2. Obtrusive.
Callous.
Obstrucción de discernimiento mental.
Okay. Callous. You mean you got a hardness over
Callo,
you.
que tiene callo. Es una cobertura dura.
Dulled perception. Like you're a butter knife.
Percibir, entorpecer. Percepción entorpecida.
And the last word, stubbornness.
Ser burro.
Borro. Okay, let's move to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Verse 19.
Versículo 19.
They have lost all feeling, so they've abandoned themselves to sensuality, practicing any kind of impurity, and always greedy for more. Okay, so let's talk about this.
Vamos a hablar sobre esto.
Okay, this verse tells us more that Sha'ul was teaching the Torah.
Este versículo nos aclara más que Sha'ul estaba enseñando Torah.
Because you cannot write this
Porque no puedes escribir esto
and speak about sensuality
y hablar sobre la sensualidad
unless you know what proper sensuality is.
a menos que sepas qué es la sensualidad apropiada.
There's an appropriate sensuality,
Hay una sensualidad apropiada
and that is found in Torah
y eso se encuentra en Torah
and in the entire book of the Song of Solomon.
y en el libro entero del Cantar de Cantares.
Although some of the imagery, I don't know if I'd use that imagery.
Ah,
Your nose is like a tower. What?
she had a big nose.
She got, that's a honker.
It precedes her.
It precedes her by a mile.
Oh, sorry
So-
guys. Go ahead.
Some of the things we got to go to the Hebrew.
Hay algunas cosas que tiene que mirar en el hebreo.
Your nose is like an ivory tower.
Tu nariz es como una torre de ivory. What's ivory? Marfil. Tu nariz es como una torre de marfil.
I can't see a man saying that.
No puedo ver un hombre decir eso.
My beloved, your nose is like an ivory tower.
Mi querida, tu nariz es como una torre de marfil.
Why did she hit me? Why did she throw the flowers at me?
Porque ella me tiró las flores. ¿Por qué me pegó? Ay, me pegaste. No.
Let's go to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Okay, let's read verse 19.
Vamos a leer el versículo 19.
And this also ties together with Romans chapter 1.
Y esto también se une con Romanos capítulo 1.
Okay. Verse 19, versículo 19. They have lost all feelings, so they abandon themselves to sensuality, practicing any kind of impurity, always greedy for more. Sounds like the world today.
Yes, suena como el mundo de hoy, ¿no?
Sounds like San Francisco
Suena como San Francisco
and Tel Aviv
o Tel Aviv.
and Brazil,
Ta,
Rio.
ta.
No, we're not just talking about homosexuality.
No simplemente estamos hablando de homosexualidad.
We're talking about carnival.
Estamos hablando de carnaval.
Okay, because in verse 19,
Porque en el versículo 19,
sensuality is G07-10
sensualidad es G766.
The reason why this is really important,
La razón por qué esto es tan importante,
because Satan is the same always.
porque Satanás es el mismo siempre.
So when you see these things that destroyed the congregation at Ephesus,
So, cuando ves estas cosas que destruyó la congregación en Efesios,
if you see these same things happening in your community,
si ves estas mismas cosas sucediendo en tu comunidad,
in your town,
en tu condado,
in your country,
en tu país,
destruction will soon follow in God's time.
la destrucción va a seguir pronto en el tiempo de Dios.
Like, where is the Roman Empire today?
Como a dónde está el imperio romano hoy
It's
en
gone.
día? Ha desaparecido.
Because this is what they fell into.
Porque ellos cayeron en esto.
Okay? What is happening in America?
¿Qué está sucediendo en América?
I talked to Pastor Ruben the other week.
Hablé con Pastor Rubén la semana pasada.
Bogota, Colombia now has a lesbian mayor.
Bogotá, Colombia tiene una alcaldesa gay, lesbiana.
Now, if he speaks against her,
Si habla en contra de ella,
he can be put in jail.
lo pueden echar preso.
Well, I'm so happy. I'll speak against her for
Ay,
you.
tan alegre estoy. Yo hablo en contra de ella por ti.
You're going to have no children. Haha,
No
you
vas a
die.
tener y vas a morir.
There's going to be no more of you.
No va a haber más de ti.
Remember Abraham, he was a man.
¿Ah?
Remember Abraham.
Acuérdate que Abraham fue hombre.
He was a man
Él era hombre
before pharmaceuticals.
antes de los farmacéuticos.
He had 6 more kids at 120 years old.
Él tuvo 6 hijos más después de 120 años.
Jewish men.
Los hombres judíos.
Okay. So here the people are living like Gentiles.
Aquí la gente está viviendo como gentiles.
So what is sensuality?
¿Eso qué es sensualidad?
G766.
G766.
Unbridled lust.
Lujuria desenfrenada.
Outrageousness.
Escandaloso.
Shamelessness.
Vergonzoso.
Now you think of this past Shabbat's lesson.
Acuérdate y piensa sobre la lección de este último Shabbat.
Before we got into the last section of the lesson,
Antes que entramos a la última sección de la lección.
I brought up that man dressed like a freak
Mostré ese hombre vestido como un extraño,
dressed in vestido
vestido en un disfraz de extraño.
teaching story time in the Episcopalian fake church.
leyendo historias en una iglesia episcopal
And it was all about him.
y se trataba todo de él.
How is that about Messiah?
¿Cómo sería que eso se trata de Mesías?
Do we even really know what Messiah looked like?
¿Verdad sabemos cómo se veía el Mesías?
Was he Rico Suave?
Él era rico, suave.
Was he Fabio? I don't
Él
even
era-
know. Was he Antonio Banderas?
Él era un Antonio Banderas
Or Julio Iglesias?
o July Church o un July Church.
July Church? Salsa Verde.
Salsa Verde.
Was he Javier Sanchez?
Era Javier Sánchez. with Tapatío.
Was he Yehoshua Lara?
Él era un Yehoshua Lara.
Okay. Now they turn on the cameras. Okay. Now, the shamelessness,
Ahora la vergüenza.
the little boy, the 11-year-old boy that we talked about on Shabbat,
El niño de 11 años que mostramos y hablamos sobre él en Shabbat.
he didn't have any shame.
Él no tenía vergüenza.
This is why this letter is important.
Por eso que esta carta es importante.
But the church cannot say anything against this.
Pero la iglesia no puede hablar en contra de esto.
Most of the Messianic body can't say anything
La
against this.
mayoría del cuerpo mesiánico no puede hablar en contra de esto.
Why?
¿Por qué?
Because their sin is just a different flavor.
Porque el pecado de ellos es solamente otro sabor.
If you're worshiping on Sunday, the Roman day,
Si estás adorando en el día romano, el domingo,
you abandon yourself to something else.
te abandonas a otra cosa.
But here Sha'ul in verse 19,
Sha'ul en el versículo 19,
saying these Gentiles have abandoned themselves to sensuality.
diciendo que estos gentiles se han entregado, se han abandonado a la sensualidad.
See, when you want everybody to look at you,
So, cuando tú quieres que todos te miren,
that means you're taking your eyes off Messiah,
eso
Yeshua.
significa que te estás quitando la vista del Mesías Yeshua.
So sensuality is about outrageousness.
La sensualidad es de outrageousness, escándalo,
In this unbridled lust.
en lujuria desenfrenada.
And this is what the world is today.
Y esto es el mundo de hoy.
When they're teaching 5-year-olds sex in kindergarten,
Cuando le están enseñando a niños de 5 años en el kinder sobre el sexo,
they're grooming them for this verse.
lo están entrenando para este versículo.
Do you understand why I do this Bethlehem Bible studies the way I do them?
¿Entiendes por qué hago estos estudios en Beth Cohen como lo hago?
See, you want to study prophecy, but you need to study the laws.
Quieres estudiar la profecía, pero debes de estudiar la ley.
Because the termites are eating away at society.
Porque los termitas están comiendo y destruyendo la sociedad.
And one day you're going to step into a sinkhole and go down the pit of hell.
Y un día te vas a pisar un hoyo y te vas a caer a lo profundo del infierno.
Because the termites ate away your foundation.
Porque los termitas se comieron tu cimiento.
Sounds like it might be in the next week's lesson.
Suena como va a estar en la lección de la próxima semana.
Let's go to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Verse 19 again.
Versículo 19 nuevamente.
They lost all feeling, so they've abandoned themselves to sensuality, partaking of any kind of impurity. What is impurity?
¿Qué es impureza?
G167,
G167.
uncleanness.
Iniquidad, impureza.
Yes. How would I know what is unclean?
¿Cómo voy a saber que es impuro?
How would I know what kind of sexuality is unclean? clean?
¿Cómo voy a saber qué clase de sexualidad es impuro?
Well, Leviticus tells me what is.
El Levíticos me demuestra lo que es o me enseña lo que es.
Leviticus 18 tells me what is unclean type of sexuality.
Levítico capítulo 18 me explica lo que es la sexualidad impura.
In Leviticus 18, verse 22,
Y Levíticos capítulo 18, versículo 22,
men having sex with men
hombres teniendo sexo con hombres.
is unclean by God's standards.
Es impuro sobre de acuerdo a las normas de Dios.
So, verse 19 once again proves Sha'ul is teaching the Torah.
Versículo 19 comprueba nuevamente que Sha'ul estaba enseñando Torah.
Impure,
Impureza,
definition number 3.
el significado número 3.
In a moral sense,
En un sentido moral,
the impurity of lustful,
la impureza de lujuria
profligate living, bad type of living,
y un modo de vivir malo. ¿De qué? Derrochador. Es una manera de vivir derrochador.
against the type of living that Jehovah wants you to do.
En contra de la manera que Jehová quiere que vivas.
So some people think it's okay to fornicate.
Algunos piensan que está bien el fornicar.
Some people think it's okay to live together and fornicate and not be married.
Hay algunos que piensan que está bien vivir juntos o convivir y fornicar y no casarse.
And Yeshua spoke against this.
Y Yeshua habló en contra de esto.
You have 5 husbands, and the man you're living with now ain't your husband.
Y tiene 5 esposos y con quien está viviendo ahora no es tu esposo.
I just love that account. You've had 5 husbands,
Has tenido 5 esposos
and the one you ain't living with now ain't your husband.
y él con quien está viviendo ahora no es tu esposo.
How are you paying for your rent?
¿Cómo está pagando tu renta?
This man told me all about my life.
Este hombre me contó sobre mi vida entera.
He's a prophet.
Él es un profeta.
Yeah, he was a prophet, but he was also seeing what your life was like.
Él era un profeta, pero también vio cómo era tu vida.
Let's go on to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Verse 19.
Versículo 19 de nuevo.
They lost all feeling, so they've abandoned themselves to sensuality, practicing any kind of impurity, and always greedy for more. Okay? So they don't want just one person.
No solamente querían una persona,
They want to keep going.
querían seguir.
That's why they have that new app for your phone now called speed dating.
Tienen una nueva aplicación para tu teléfono que se llama citas rápidas.
And
Speed
there's
dating.
an app for your phone called Hookup.
Hay una aplicación para tu teléfono que se llama enganche. Un enganche.
Remember there
Hookup.
was a movie in the 1970s
Acuérdate que había una película en los 1970
called Logan's Run.
que se llamaba Logan's Run.
Anybody remember Logan's Run?
I remember Logan's Run.
Remember Logan's Run? And the person put themselves on the list for relations.
La persona se puso en una lista para relaciones
And she got beamed over to the guy's apartment.
y fue transportada al apartamento del señor.
Now you can do that via your phone.
Y ahora puedes hacer eso con tu teléfono.
Movies always tell what's going to happen in the future.
Las películas a veces te dicen lo que va a suceder en el futuro.
Hollywood is the devil's prophets.
Hollywood son los profetas del diablo.
So here, these people don't just want a little sex, they want a lot of sex.
So aquí esta gente no quieren un poco de sexo, quieren mucho sexo.
But remember at the beginning of the study why we studied the city of Ephesus.
Pero acuérdate que en el comienzo de este estudio, ¿por qué estudiamos sobre la ciudad de Ephesus?
What was going on in that city was all about sensuality.
Lo que estaba sucediendo en esa sociedad se trataba de la sensualidad.
Okay? Going on to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Verse number 20.
Versículo 20.
But this is not the lesson you learned from the Messiah. Okay? So Sha'ul says, this is not what you were taught.
Sha'ul está diciendo que esto no es lo que se te enseñó.
Okay? Because the Messiah taught the Torah.
Porque el Mesías enseñó la Torah.
And what did he say in Matthew 5, verse 18?
¿Y qué fue lo que él dijo en Mateo 5:18?
Not one jot or tittle will be missing from the law until heaven and earth pass away.
Ni una jota ni un tilde desaparecerá de la ley hasta que el cielo y la tierra desaparezcan.
So Leviticus chapter 18 through chapter 21 talks about biblical sexuality.
Levíticos capítulo 18 al capítulo 21 habla sobre la sexualidad bíblica.
Okay, let's go on to the next part.
Vamos a la próxima parte.
Let's go on to section number 8. Let's go to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva, la sección número 8.
Let's go to the next slide after that.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva después de esa.
Verse 21 to 24.
Versículos 21 al 24.
I think we're on slide 277.
Estamos en la diapositiva 277.
If you really listen to him, you were instructed about him, then you learned that since what is in Yeshua is truth, then so far as your former way of life is concerned, you must strip off your old nature, because your old nature is thoroughly rotted by its deceptive desires. And you must let your spirits and minds keep being renewed, and clothe yourself with the new nature created to be godly and express itself in righteousness, holiness that flow from the truth. Amen?
Amen.
So here he's saying that you got to leave the pagan Gentile lifestyle.
Aquí él está diciendo que tienes que dejar el estilo de vida pagano.
Strip off your old nature.
Quítate la vieja naturaleza.
Okay? That means whatever is unclean.
Eso quiere decir lo que sea impuro.
Okay? How do you know what is unclean?
¿Cómo sabrás que es impuro?
How do you know what an unclean thought is?
¿Cómo tú sabrás que es un pensamiento impuro?
How do you know what an unclean food is?
¿Cómo sabrás que es una comida impura?
How do you know what an unclean type of marital relation is?
¿Cómo sabrás que será una relación matrimonial impura?
Like, can two women be married?
Como, digamos, ¿pueden dos mujeres casarse?
Can two men be married?
¿Pueden dos hombres casarse?
No, that is forbidden by God's laws.
No, eso es prohibido por las leyes de Dios.
So the church and some Messianic congregations
So, la iglesia y algunas congregaciones mesiánicas,
and the Pittsburgh congregation where they got shot up
en la congregación de Pittsburgh, a donde fueron disparados,
was doing
atacados,
the Brit Milah of two gay men that adopted a boy.
estaba haciendo una circuncisión en un bebé que era de dos hombres gay.
When the gunmen came in,
Cuando el francotirador entró,
they were doing the Brit Milah. They were celebrating these two gay men adopting a baby boy and doing circumcision.
estaban celebrando estos dos hombres homosexuales adoptando este niño y haciendo el Brit Milah.
Yeah, that gets lost.
¿Ah?
That story got lost.
Esa historia se perdió, se barró debajo de la alfombra.
Not to say that anybody should die,
No diciendo que cualquiera debe de morir,
but when you're spitting at God's laws,
pero cuando le está escupiendo a las leyes de Dios,
Jehovah's not going to protect you.
Jehová no te va a proteger.
Okay? So here, in these verses that we just read,
So aquí en estos versículos que terminamos de leer,
it says in verse 21, Yeshua is the truth.
dice en el versículo 21 que Yeshua es la verdad.
In verse 22,
En versículo 22
he's saying you have to leave your old type of life
Dice que te tienes que apartar de tu viejo estilo de vida
and become a new creation.
y ser una nueva criatura.
You have to allow the potter to make the clay the way he wants you to be made.
Tienes que permitir que el alfarero moldee el barro como él lo quiera usar.
And a lot of people, even myself, fought things for years.
Y hasta yo mismo he luchado con cosas durante los años.
Okay? We need to let the living water soften our clay.
Tenemos que dejar que el agua viva ablande nuestro barro.
Or you will be broken.
Arcilla o barro.
Or you will be broken.
O serás quebrantado.
Okay? These couple of verses prove once again that Sha'ul is teaching the Torah.
Estos par de versículos nuevamente compruebe que Sha'ul estaba enseñando Torah.
Because how can you tell your old nature from a new nature?
¿Cómo es que puedes distinguir de tu vieja naturaleza a la nueva naturaleza?
Okay, if you're still going out to hunt sexual relations with somebody who's not your wife,
Si estás saliendo y teniendo relaciones sexuales con alguien que no es tu esposa
or somebody who's not your husband,
o alguien que no es tu esposo,
then you still have that old nature and you're not the person that should be married.
entonces tienes esa vieja naturaleza y eres una persona que no debe de estar casado.
Because you cannot control that old nature.
Porque no puedes controlar esa vieja naturaleza.
Drug addict
O si eres un adicto a drogas,
alcoholic,
o un alcohólico,
or gambler,
o apostador, jugador,
or a shopaholic.
o compra zapatos,
Yeah,
muchos zapatos,
muchos zapatos. What do you call handbags?
carteras,
Carteras. Like banderas, carteras.
carteras.
Let me take a drink. Or if you come to Shabbat,
Adicto a las compras. Un adicto a las compras.
or if you come to Shabbat
O si viene a Shabbat
and you haven't worn the same dress all year,
y te has puesto, that you haven't,
you have not worn the
Okay.
same dress twice that year,
que no te has puesto el mismo traje 2 veces ese año.
you have a lot of clothes.
Tú tienes mucha ropa.
And you have a walk-in apartment.
y tienes un apartamento que es un closet.
And you need to purge.
Y necesitas deshacerte de mucho.
Okay, so whatever your old life was,
Como ha sido tu vieja vida,
he's saying to them, you have to change it.
él le está diciendo a ellos que tienen que cambiarlo.
Now, what would be the standard for righteousness and holiness?
¿Cuál sería la norma para la justicia y santidad?
Because it says, clothe yourself in express yourself in righteousness.
Porque dice que te exprese en la justicia,
Clothe yourself in a new godly nature.
que te vista en la nueva naturaleza.
Where would I find the definitions for this?
¿A dónde voy a conseguir o encontrar las definiciones para esto?
Would I ask the Pope?
¿Le preguntaría al Papa?
No, I'd ask the Father of all creation.
No, le preguntaría al Padre de toda la creación.
And he wrote it down.
Y lo escribió.
And he said in Deuteronomy 30, it's not too hard.
Y él dijo en Deuteronomio 30 que no es tan difícil.
You're the one who makes it hard.
Tú eres el que lo hace difícil.
And we all do it.
Y nosotros toditos lo hacemos difícil.
I can't do that.
No lo puedo hacer.
Go on to the next slide.
A la próxima diapositiva.
Verse 21.
Versículo 21.
If you really listened to him and were instructed about him, then you learn that since what is in Yeshua is truth. Okay, so we were instructed by Yeshua.
So fuimos instruidos por Yeshua.
He taught us that he and the Father are one.
Él nos enseñó o nos instruyó que Él y el Padre son uno.
That's a very important understanding.
Eso es un entendimiento muy importante.
Because Yeshua would never contradict the Father
Porque Yeshua nunca va a contradecir al Padre
in any way at all.
en ninguna forma.
Let me say that again.
Deja repetir eso.
Yeshua said, I and the Father are one.
Yeshua dijo, yo y el Padre somos uno.
So he's never going to contradict Jehovah, the Eternal One, the Father.
So él nunca va a contradecir a Jehová, el Eterno, su Padre.
Now, we need this thought when we get to verse 22.
Necesitamos este modo de pensar cuando lleguemos al versículo 22.
Because we listen, you can never, I say this over and over.
Yo siempre repito esto.
I say it at the beginning of every Shabbat service.
Lo digo en el comienzo de cada servicio de Shabbat.
Satan knows Yeshua,
Satanás conoce a Yeshua,
but we follow Yeshua.
pero nosotros seguimos a Yeshua.
You cannot go wrong with doing what he did.
No te puedes equivocar con el hacer lo que él hizo.
You cannot go wrong being instructed by the Gospels.
No puedes equivocarte en ser instruido por las buenas nuevas.
He sat down the Passover.
Él se sentó en el Pesach, en Pesach.
You need to do that every year,
Necesitas hacer eso cada año,
not every month,
no todos los meses,
once a year on the proper day.
una vez al año en el día apropiado.
Okay, you got to do what he did. Yeshua celebrated Sukkot.
Tienes que hacer lo que él hizo. Yeshua celebró Sukkot
In John Yochanan chapter 7,
en Yohanan, en Juan capítulo 7.
he celebrated Sukkot. So why don't you on the right day?
Él celebró Sukkot. ¿Y por qué tú no lo haces en el día apropiado?
Well, how do you know you're on the right
¿Y
day?
cómo es que sabes que está en el día correcto?
Well, then you got to sight the moon.
Entonces tienes que divisar la luna.
Okay? Now, if you don't do that,
Si no haces eso,
if you just go by what the rabbis say,
si solo te llevas por lo que dicen los rabinos,
then you're making a mistake in a different area.
entonces te estás equivocando en otra área diferente.
Let's go on to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
What is the word truth?
¿Qué es la palabra verdad?
Let's read verse 21.
Vamos a leer el versículo 21.
If you really listen to him and were instructed about him, then you learn that since what is in Yeshua is truth. So you were instructed about him.
So fuiste instruido sobre él.
That means they were not reading the Gospels, they were instructed about him.
Eso quiere decir que ellos no estaban leyendo los evangelios, las buenas nuevas. Ellos fueron instruidos sobre él.
It took a great amount of time to put the Gospels together.
Tomó un buen tiempo para compilar
You had to compile.
los evangelios.
Yeah. And then once it was done, it had to be copied, and that was not done at
Y ya cuando se compiló, entonces había que copiarlo.
it wasn't done at Staples.
No tenían staples para ir a hacer copias.
Oh, I'd like 500 copies of this.
Deme 500 copias de esto, por favor.
They were handwritten, people.
Eran copiados a mano.
On
Fueron escritos a
parchment.
mano,
On
en
parchment.
pergamino.
We forget that.
Nosotros nos olvidamos de eso.
Oh, just go pick up a ream of paper.
Vamos a buscar un bloque de papel.
Print out another copy.
Imprime otra copia.
Send me an email.
Envíame un correo electrónico.
They had to do all this by hand.
Ellos tenían que hacer todo esto a mano.
All right, so what is in Yeshua is truth.
Lo que existe en Yeshua es verdad.
So what is truth?
So, ¿qué es verdad?
The word used in the Greek is G225.
La palabra usada en el griego es el G225.
Okay, let's look at definition number 3.
Vamos a mirar el significado número 3.
What is true in things appertaining to God and the duties of men.
Lo que es verdad en las cosas que pertenecen a Dios y las responsabilidades del hombre.
Right, responsibility to God.
La responsabilidad a Dios.
What is my responsibility to God?
¿Cuál es mi responsabilidad a Dios?
Everybody write, what is my responsibility to God?
Escriban, ¿qué es mi responsabilidad a Dios?
Everybody write, what is my responsibility to God?
¿Qué es mi responsabilidad a Dios?
What is my responsibility to God?
¿Qué es mi responsabilidad a Dios?
Then write the second sentence.
Y escribe la próxima pregunta.
Where would I find these responsibilities?
¿Y a dónde encuentro estas responsabilidades?
Where would I find these responsibilities?
¿A dónde encontraría estas responsabilidades?
Where would I find these
¿A
responsibilities?
dónde encontraría estas
And
responsabilidades?
then write ... Torah.
Después escribe Torah.
www.bgmctv.org. And listen to our radio station, WTRCradio.com.
Hold on, I'm trying to write this.
WTRCradio.com.
No, not that. Where would I find
Where would I find this truth? Punto.
And Beth Goim, www.bgmctv.com. WTRC Radio.
WTRC, our radio station is now operational. We got the glitches worked out today. Good Messianic music.
Baruch Hashem.
You can hear the Salsa Verde show. Yeah, we're gonna. And then if there's breaking news, if there's news from Israel, we'll even put it on there.
Amen.
So we're going to become Messianic Media Hub. Joshua's holding Salsa Verde.
That's not tapatio, is it?
All right, let's move on to the next slide. No, wait, we got to finish. Moral and religious truth.
Verdad moral y religiosa.
So how would I know what Yeshua's truth is? What did he teach?
So, ¿cómo puedo saber lo que es la verdad en Yeshua? ¿Qué fue lo que le enseñó?
Did he ever say, come over to my house, I'm having a birthday party?
¿Él acaso ha dicho, ven a mi casa, estoy celebrando un cumpleaños?
Did the disciples ever sing La Cumpleaños Feliz?
Los
La
discípulos acaso
Cumpleaños.
cantaron Happy Birthday to you.
To you,
Happy
man.
Birthday to you.
Okay. We don't see Yeshua celebrating his birthday.
Nosotros no vemos a Yeshua celebrando su cumpleaños.
So should we celebrate our birthdays?
So debemos nosotros celebrar nuestro cumpleaños.
Not after you're 21. No. At 2 birthday parties in the Bible, both times somebody dies.
Los dos cumpleaños que se ven en la Biblia, alguien termina muerto.
Both times somebody dies.
Las dos veces alguien murió.
Okay, next slide.
Because if you're good, you go to heaven. But if you're bad, you die when you die. Look at Josh.
Okay, verse 22. 22, versículo 22.
Versículo 22.
Got 15 more minutes, everybody.
15 minutos más.
Then, so far as your former way of life is concerned, you must strip off your old nature, because your old nature is thoroughly rotted by its deceptive desires. Okay? So, your former nature,
Tu naturaleza anterior,
the way you lived your life,
la manera en que viviste tu vida,
has to change.
tiene que cambiar.
He's telling them in Ephesus, you got to change.
Él está diciendo en Éfeso que tienen que cambiar.
And that's what we hear.
Y eso es lo que enseñamos aquí.
It's them turning their system off now, because they only last an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. You got to look at your life,
Tienes que mirar tu vida
and you must change.
y tú tienes que cambiar.
The Lord is not going to change you. He's going to give you the tools to change it yourself.
El Señor no te va a cambiar, Él te va a dar las herramientas para que tú mismo te cambies.
A lot of people pray, Lord, change my heart.
Y mucha gente oran, Señor, cambia mi corazón.
And that's a good prayer,
Y eso es una oración buena.
but why don't you change it yourself?
¿Por qué no lo cambias tú mismo?
Desire what the Lord desires.
Que desees lo que desea el Señor.
Now, in verse 22,
En el versículo 22
okay, it talks about a former way of life.
habla de una manera de vida anterior.
That means he's teaching Torah,
Eso significa que Él está enseñando Torah.
because That means you have to have a new nature.
Pues eso significa que debes de tener una nueva naturaleza.
And we have to follow the Father's truths.
Y tenemos que seguir las verdades del Padre.
Let's go to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Verse 22.
Versículo 22.
Then, so far as your former way of life is concerned, you must strip off the old nature because your old nature is thoroughly rotted by its deceptive desires. So now he's saying the way you live as a pagan
Ahora él está diciendo que la manera que vives como pagano
is thoroughly rotten,
es
is completely rotten,
completamente podrida.
completely rotten.
Completamente podrida.
Okay? Now, that means in every aspect.
Eso significa en cada aspecto.
So how do you change that?
So, ¿cómo es que cambias eso?
You have to learn the 34 categories.
Tienes que aprender las 34 categorías.
You have to find out what you have to do.
Tienes que averiguar qué es lo que tú tienes que hacer.
If you're an unmarried man, you only have certain things you have to do.
Si no eres casado, if you're not married,
If you're an unmarried man,
si eres un hombre que no eres casado, entonces solamente tienes ciertas cosas
it's
que
different
tienes
than
que hacer.
it is different than being a married man.
Es diferente a ser un hombre casado.
It is different than being a married man with children, married
Yes.
with children.
Pum, 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 no.
Hated that
Es diferente
show.
ser casado con niños.
I hated that show.
I love that show.
No, because it was the downfall of man.
Well, yeah, fue la caída del hombre. Pero
They made men idiots.
hicieron del hombre idiotas en ese.
Homer Simpson makes men an idiot
Homer Simpson hace los hombres ver como idiotas
instead of My Three Sons
en vez de mis tres hijos, my
or,
two sons,
or Happy Days
or
or
Happy Days.
Mr.
Leave it to
Cunningham.
Beaver.
Leave it to Beaver.
Leave it to Beaver.
When we had godly men and godly role models.
Cuando teníamos hombres piadosos y ejemplos santos.
But what he's saying here in verse 22
Lo que estamos viendo, lo que él está diciendo aquí en el versículo 22
is once you realize something is rotten,
es ya cuando realizas que algo está podrido o corrupto,
then you want to get rid of something that's rotten or it's going to infect other things.
quieres echar o deshacerte de esa cosa, es eso de eso que está corrupto para que no infecte lo demás.
Let me say that again.
Deja repetir eso.
Once something is rotten,
Ya cuando algo se corrompe,
you ever get a rotten piece of fruit?
has comprado un pedazo de fruta podrida,
Like one of your bananas goes rotten.
cuando el plátano se pudre.
If you leave it there with the other bananas, the other ones are going to go rotten really
Si lo
quick.
dejas ahí con los demás plátanos, se pudren los demás plátanos.
The same goes for the body of Messiah.
Lo mismo se trata con el cuerpo del Mesías.
Okay? Sin touches many people.
El pecado toca o infecta varias personas.
So you have to strip off the old nature,
So te tienes que deshacer de la vieja naturaleza,
which is thoroughly rotted,
que es completamente corrupto,
because you're going to infect everyone else.
porque vas a infectar a los demás.
That's why, if somebody is speaking against the leadership of your congregation,
Porque si alguien está hablando en contra del liderazgo de tu congregación,
they're going to be removed from the congregation,
van a ser removidos de la congregación.
because that's a rotten thought process.
Porque ese es un proceso de pensar corrupto.
Okay? So, what about yourselves he's talking about here?
¿Y qué de ustedes él está diciendo aquí?
He's saying that your old nature is rotten,
Él está diciendo que tu vieja naturaleza es corrupta,
and but it's got deceptive
que
desires.
tiene deseos engañosos. Thank you.
Let's go to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
What is deceptive?
¿Qué es engañosa?
Okay, in some translations, it uses the word for deceptive, corrupted.
En algunas traducciones para engañosa usa la palabra corrupto.
It is G5351.
Es G5351.
Definition number 1, we're going to focus on to destroy.
Vamos a enfocarnos en el significado número 1 para destruir.
Something that's corrupted is destructive.
Algo que es corrupto es destructivo.
Okay, it's sort of like using a dirty needle that's got HIV or something.
Es como usar una jeringuilla contaminada con VIH.
You're not going to die quick.
No vas a morir rápido.
The virus is going to get into you,
El virus te va a entrar
and it's going to eat you up from
y
inside.
te va a comer desde adentro, te va a destruir desde adentro.
So here, corrupted is it'll destroy something.
Corrupto es que va a destruir algo.
Number 2,
Número 2.
the temple was corrupted or destroyed when anyone defiled it.
El templo era corrupto o destruido cuando cualquiera lo contaminó.
Definition number 3,
Significado número 3.
to be destroyed, to perish.
Ser destruido, a perecer.
So if you don't strip off your old nature,
So, si no te deshaces de la vieja naturaleza,
you're going to perish.
vas a perecer.
Because when you die,
Porque
you die.
when you die, you die.
Okay? And number 4, the deceptive is being depravity.
Depravado.
Okay? So these deceptive desires
Estos deseos engañosos
are going to destroy you,
te van a destruir
and it's going to destroy your eternal soul.
y va a destruir a tu alma eterna.
Okay, so if you don't get into heaven, you get to spend at least 1,000 years in hell.
So, si no llegas a entrar al cielo, vas a estar por lo menos 1000 años en el infierno.
And you're not going to be partying with Elvis.
Y no va a estar disfrutando con Elvis.
You're going to be in your own cell, alone, in pain.
Vas a estar en tu propia celda, solo, en solitario y en dolor.
Okay, and you're going to be able to see heaven from your cell.
Y vas a poder ver el cielo desde tu celda.
Let's go to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Verse 23.
Versículo 23.
And you must let your spirits and minds keep being renewed. This is a beautiful verse.
Este es un versículo bello.
This shows of the progression that he wants you to take.
Esto demuestra del progreso que Él quiere que tomes.
Why does it have to be renewed?
¿Por qué es que tiene que ser renovado?
If we're under grace.
Si estamos bajo la gracia.
If we're living under grace,
Si estamos viviendo bajo la gracia,
you might want to plug in the tablet next time. The batteries don't last for 7 days. Okay? So why does my mind have to be renewed?
¿por qué mi mente tiene que ser renovada?
If Yeshua did away with the law at the cross.
Si Yeshua se deshizo de la ley en la cruz.
Okay? So here it is a progression.
Aquí es progreso.
Okay? You have to keep being renewed.
Tienes que seguir siendo renovado.
This is why we do the parashah every week of every year.
Por eso que leemos el parashá cada semana de cada año.
And some people get bored with it.
Y hay gente que se aburren de
To those people I say you're foolish.
a esa gente digo que son tontos.
The reason I'm saying you're foolish,
La razón por qué digo que son tontos,
because each year you're at a different place in your own walk with Jehovah Elohim.
porque cada año estás en un lugar diferente en tu caminar con Jehová Elohim.
Okay? And you're going to be more responsible each year.
Y vas a ser más responsable cada año.
So you have to renew your mind.
Eso tienes que renovar tu mente.
Renewing our minds reminds us that we have to fight for that renewal.
Renovando nuestras mentes nos hace acuerdo de que tenemos que luchar para ese renuevo.
Let me say that again.
Voy a repetir eso.
You got to fight for your own renewal.
Hay que luchar por tu propio renuevo.
He's saying to them, you have to change your lives.
Él está diciendo a ellos, tienes que cambiar sus vidas.
You got to change your thought process.
Tienes que cambiar tu proceso, tu manera de pensar.
That's the hardest part for most people.
Esa es la parte más difícil para muchos.
Changing the way you think.
Cambiando la manera en que piensan.
I don't think that way anymore.
Ya no pienso de esa forma.
Oh, but Lord,
Oh, pues Señor,
well, she sculpted her body so
pero
well.
escultó su cuerpo tan nice. Bien.
You've created such a beautiful woman. Look at that.
Has creado una bella mujer, mira eso.
And she's 22.
Y tiene 22 años.
You have to change your thought process.
Tienes que cambiar tu manera de pensar.
Remember, he just finished talking about sensuality.
Acuérdate que él terminó de hablar de la sensualidad.
This was a big part of their society,
Esto fue una gran parte de su sociedad,
of Ephesus.
de Efeso.
And it's a big part of the society in the world today.
Y es una gran parte de la sociedad en el mundo hoy.
Okay, let's go to the next slide.
Vamos a la próxima diapositiva.
Verse 24.
Versículo 24.
Clothe yourself with the new nature created to be godly, which expresses itself in righteousness and holiness that flow from the truth. Okay?
Amen.
So you got to clothe yourself with the new godly person.
So te tiene que vestir con la nueva persona piadosa.
That means changing a lot about ourselves.
Eso significa cambiar mucho de nosotros mismos.
And remember, he's writing to the baby congregation in Ephesus.
Acuérdate que él está escribiéndole a la congregación bebé en Éfeso.
They didn't have the book of Revelation.
Ellos no tenían el libro de Revelación.
They didn't have 2,000 years of history.
Ellos no tenían
Did not have
no
2,000
tenían 2000 años de historia
that we do.
que nosotros tenemos.
We should be more responsible.
Nosotros debemos de ser más responsables,
But we want the tickle-ear doctrine.
pero queremos la doctrina cosquillosa.
We don't want to come to Bible study.
No queremos venir al estudio bíblico.
We don't want to stay for Shabbat.
No queremos quedarnos para Shabbat.
I'm so happy the time changed, so as soon as that fat guy's done talking, I can leave.
Me alegro que ha cambiado la hora porque cuando termine ese gordo de hablar, me voy.
Don't worry, I'm going to be taking pictures.
No te preocupes que yo estoy tomando fotos.
Because the people that leave as soon as Shabbat's over, yeah, they fulfill their mandate.
La gente que se va después que cae el sol en Shabbat, sí, ellos cumplen con el mandato.
But in a world that's going to go crazy,
Pero en un mundo que se va a volver loco, que va a haber mucho
and
caos,
if I got to live with them,
si tengo que vivir con ellos,
I'm not going to live with them.
yo no voy a vivir con ellos.
Those are people that don't support the congregation.
Esas son personas que no apoyan la
They
congregación.
don't tithe and they don't work and help out unless they're begged to work.
No
Could you please
diezman,
do
no
this?
trabajan a menos que se le pida.
Okay. Then y'all can live by yourself.
Okay, entonces pueden vivir solos.
I'm going to live with me and my God.
Yo voy a vivir con mi Dios y conmigo.
Because I know He's never going to leave me or forsake me.
Porque yo sé que Él nunca me abandonarás ni me
Let me just.
olvidará.
Let's go to the last slide.
Vamos a la última diapositiva.
Yeah. 2 more slides.
Dos más.
Verse 24 again.
Versículo 24 nuevamente.
Clothe yourself with the new nature created to be godly and express itself in righteousness and holiness that flow from the truth. What is righteousness?
¿Qué es justicia?
This is G1343.
Es G1343.
Definition number 2.
Significado número 2.
A state approved by God.
Un estado aprobado por Dios.
So would God, the Father who spoke the kosher laws,
So, ¿será que Dios, el Padre que habló las leyes kosher,
approve of you eating a ham sandwich?
va a aprobar de que tú comas un sándwich de jamón?
Would God approve of you putting up a pagan Christmas tree in your home?
¿Será que Dios va a aprobar que tú pongas un árbol pagano de Navidad en tu hogar?
Would God approve of a married woman uncovering her hair?
¿Será que Dios va a aprobar que una mujer casada se descubra su cabello?
No, He wouldn't.
No, no lo hará.
Would he approve of a woman blowing the shofar and wearing a talit?
¿Acaso Dios aprobará que una mujer use el talí y sople el shofar?
I heard of a story recently.
Yo escuché una historia
There,
no hace
there used
mucho,
to be a woman that came here.
que había una mujer que venía aquí,
I had to throw her out.
la tuve que echar.
She started her own congregation where she's the rabbi.
Ella comenzó su propia congregación a donde ella es la rabina.
She wears a talit and blows the shofar.
Usa el talí y suena el shofar.
And her husband sits there like a little faggot.
Y su esposo se sienta ahí como un pajarito.
Is that a state approved by God?
¿Ah?
Is that a state approved by God?
¿Eso es un estado aprobado por Dios?
No, because God called Aaron and his sons.
Porque Dios llamó a Aarón y sus hijos.
The priesthood, the people that are supposed to be teaching, the Leviim,
El sacerdocio, el Levaim, que están supuestos a enseñar,
are the males.
son los hombres.
Last slide, going to the last slide for tonight.
Última diapositiva de la noche.
We got to understand what holiness.
Tenemos que entender que es santidad.
This is G3742.
Es E3742.
Piety towards God.
Piedad hacia Dios.
Observing the obligations toward God.
Observando las obligaciones de piedad a Dios.
So where would I find these
¿A
things?
dónde voy a encontrar estas cosas?
Oh, that would be in the first 5 books of the Torah.
O eso será en los primeros 5 libros de la Torah.
And, another question I got,
Otra pregunta que me hicieron,
which was a good question.
que fue una pregunta buena.
But they say, well, we don't see them celebrating the holy days after they get in the land.
Dicen que no lo vemos celebrando los días santos que ellos entran a la tierra.
What does Torah say we should do?
Que es lo que Torah dice que debemos de hacer.
Nothing supersedes the Torah.
Nada sobrepasa la Torah.
The Torah is perfect.
La Torah es perfecta.
What happens afterwards
Lo que sucede después
is events that occur later on.
son eventos que ocurren después.
So if God said in Leviticus 23,
So Dios dijo en Levíticos 23,
you're to celebrate the holy days no matter where you live,
tienes que celebrar los días santos no importa dónde mores.
then you celebrate them no matter where you live.
Entonces los celebras no importa dónde
All right,
mores.
we're going to stop right there.
Vamos a pausar ahí
And we're going to beginning section number 9.
y vamos a entrar a sección número 9 la semana que viene.
Any questions or comments before we close in
Hay
prayer?
preguntas o comentarios antes de cerrar.
So I got back to where we ended. Paula.
Verse 18,
El versículo 18,
resisting God's will,
resistiendo la voluntad de Dios.
drink to enter into the Sabbath,
Para entrar al Shabbat,
you wash your hands and feet.
te lava las manos y los pies.
But because what I'm wondering, for those and drinking of wine,
Y beber vino.
what happens if somebody is an alcoholic?
¿Qué sucede que si alguien es alcohólico?
Then drink wine. Can they drink grape juice?
¿Pueden tomar jugo de uva en vez?
Yeah, they can drink if they're an alcoholic and they don't want to fall back into sin, they can do the grape
Si
juice.
son alcohólicos y no quieren regresar al pecado, sí pueden tomar jugo de uva.
But you should be able to overcome that problem with God.
Pero debes de poder sobrepasar ese problema con Dios. ¿Ah? Derrotar.
I was wondering,
Because alcoholism is a demon.
Porque el alcoholismo es un demonio.
And if you have the light living in you, you don't have that demon anymore.
Y si tienes la luz morando en ti, entonces ya no existe ese demonio en ti.
is sexual impurity within the bounds of marriage? I mean, if they don't go outside and commit adultery.
Impureza sexual puede existir en los confines de matrimonio si no salen a cometer adulterio.
There are rules about sexuality in marriage.
Hay reglas sobre la sexualidad en el matrimonio.
So if the husband wants to perform sodomy on his wife, that's impure.
So, si el esposo quiere sodomizar su esposa, eso es impuro. Bueno,
Okay?
¿ok?
All right, let's close in prayer.
Vamos a cerrar.
Thank you, Lord, for this blessing tonight. Thank you, Lord, for this blessing of this study. May we draw close. And thank you for your servant Sha'ul. When we slow down and read his letter slowly, we truly see that he was trying to be a great help to new believers. And let us grow from these letters and understand these letters. In your name, Yeshua, and everybody said, Amen. Shalom, Havarim.
Shalom, this is Messianic Rabbi Andrew Dinnerman. I would personally like to thank you for tuning in to the Remnant's Call each and every week. You can listen to the full message on our website, bethgoyim.org. If you have drawn closer to the King of Kings, learned more about Him today, we are blessed. If you are blessed by these messages, please consider a donation to our ministry. You can go to our website, bethgoyim.org. That's BETHGOYIM.org. And click on the donate button. You do not have to have a PayPal account to donate. All you need is a debit card. Once again, thank you very much for listening to The Remnant's Call.
If you have not taken your first steps to be born again, just ask God's help. Remember, it's His loving grace that has come to find you. No one is worthy or able to reach God, but God can reach us, and He's reaching out to you now. Just open your heart and let Him in. His arms are open, and the blessing of salvation and eternal life are waiting for you. Don't let it wait any longer.
Ya Adonai, panavoleka, vikuneka, Yisa Adonai, panavoleka, vayasem laka, shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord lift His face to shine upon you. May the Lord be gracious unto you and give you His shalom.
Shalom, my name is Messianic Rabbi Andrew Dinnerman, and I invite you to come to visit our congregation. If you are in the tri-state area, come out and visit with us on Shabbat. We are a congregation of Jews and Gentiles, living as one in the Messiah Yeshua. Bgmc is a place of true worship. The focus never wanders from the Hebraic roots of our faith. Beth Goyim is rooted in the Word of God from Bereshit through to the book of Revelation. Messiah's strong words against man-made tradition are carefully recorded in Matthew 7. That is the reason we only follow the straight-up instructions found in Scripture, truly the way, the truth, and the life. If you're looking for a deeper walk with Adonai, come out for our Tuesday evening Bible study called Messianic Torah Time. Come, spend the day with us on any Shabbat. We start at 11 a.m. with the sound of the ancient Hebrew shofar. Next, we offer our King praise and worship in English, Hebrew, and Spanish. After worship, we review the headlines in the previous week's news from around the globe, especially news from the Holy Land, Israel. We don't just list the news headlines as current events, but we comb through the scriptures, searching for clues to understand what they mean and then to help pinpoint prophetically our current position on Adonai's clock. After digesting all that modern information, we leave the world behind as we journey with our Adonai deep into His eternal Word, not with just one or two scriptures, but usually 7 or more scriptures. The spiritual nourishment and the richness of His kingdom become accessible to the ones who share this special time and seek them out. The day does not end there. Because Shabbat is so special to Him, there is always so much more that our King desires to share. So instead of separating and leaving, we stay together as a family for potluck lunch and an afternoon study of our King's Word. We close the Shabbat together with the reading of the new week's parashah. That's the Torah portion. Even after those blessings, many of us just can't get enough. So the members bring prepared homemade foods to share while we all enjoy an uplifting movie together. If all that information is not quite enough, you can check out our website where you will find over 200 video teachings and biblical holy day studies. Under Messianic Torah Time, the Hebrew Roots button, you'll discover free studies on many different topics, including PowerPoint slide presentations. If Beth Goyim sounds like a place you'd love to visit, but you live outside the tri-state area, there is still a way to connect with us. We stream live on the internet on Tuesday, Thursday, and Shabbat. The website is www.bethgoyim.org. That's BETHGOYIM.org. Our phone number is 973-338-7800 or 978-2-YESHUA. That's 978, the number 2, Yeshua. Shalom.